Hello, and welcome to the Albright Scholar for April 2023. My name is John Pankratz. I teach history at Albright, and each month it's my privilege to welcome BCTV viewers and residents of Greater Reading to take a glimpse inside our learning community up on North 13th Street, to look at the work being done by teachers and students, and to think about its impact on all of us. It is a beautiful day in downtown Reading. And we are going to be talking about nature. We're going to be talking about various life forms here on planet Earth and the planet that we share with them. It's been really a privilege this year to introduce you to a number of the new faces on the Albright campus. And once again, we have a newbie, a brand new professor of biology, of entomology at Albright, Dr. Beth Ann Berningas Sokolar. Beth Ann, welcome to the Albright Scholar.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, John.
It's great to have you. It's been a busy year already for you, lots of teaching, but you've also had a number of publications coming out.
Yes.
And
yep.
I want to talk both about your research into the ecology of bees, and then also some of the teaching that you're doing.
Wonderful.
As well. Now you went to school as an undergrad here in Pennsylvania at a legendary school named Swarthmore.
Yep.
And then you prepared your master's and doctorate at Rutgers, if I recall?
Only my doctorate. Yeah, I went straight to the PhD at Rutgers. Yeah.
Great. And when did you latch on to our favorite little insects, our hardest working and most productive insects?
Well, that's what I think, but experts in other groups of insects would beg to differ, I'm sure.
I guess mosquitoes have a big impact as well, but
they sure do. Not as nice of a one for us. Yeah. I got into bees a little bit by accident, actually. I took 2 years between undergrad and starting my doctorate to work and figure out what I wanted to do.
Great.
And I knew vaguely that I wanted to do something about how something about interactions in the environment. Yeah. And I was also interested, ideally, in something that had human impact. But there's a whole lot in the world of entomology that you could narrow in on that. So one of the things I did during those 2 years was an internship at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum down in D.C.
Everybody's favorite museum.
Yeah, certainly mine. Yeah. There's a bit of debate in my family, though.
Maybe air and space, people like that.
Yeah,
too.
I was going to say my family goes more towards the space. But definitely my favorite museum. So I actually worked behind the scenes in the beetle collection at the Smithsonian.
Yes.
That was sort of my first love with insects, and that was really a wonderful opportunity. And I actually applied for some graduate funding to work with beetles during that time, and wasn't accepted for those grants. And then when it was starting to become time to actually sit down and apply for grad school, I made the decision to limit myself geographically because I was in a relationship that led to my husband now. Thankfully, that worked out since I made a big life decision around that. So I was looking in the Mid-Atlantic based on where he was going to graduate school at Princeton, and looking at what entomology labs were available. And the bee lab at Rutgers University, led by Dr. Rachel Winfrey, was hiring for a job that started in the early spring of 2012, and so I got that job and started working with bees, and immediately said, this ticks all the boxes that I wanted. It's got these very cool theoretical interactions between animals and plants, and then with a very obvious and important human impact as well. So I was hooked.
Great, yeah. I can understand that. And you were both in New Jersey.
Yeah, and then I got to continue my relationship, which ended well.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, I know from reading a couple of your articles that you've often studied bees out in a different habitat, out in the tall grass prairie, or what's left or what's recovered of the tall grass prairie in Minnesota.
Yeah, so aside from that very first job in New Jersey that only lasted a few months until I started my grad program, all of my research has been away from the East Coast. So my PhD work itself was in Montana and Idaho. And then at the same time that I was starting that work to get my PhD degree, I also started a side project in tallgrass prairie in Illinois. So I got around a lot during that degree. Yeah.
Tallgrass prairie doesn't exist everywhere. It used to fill the middle of North America.
Correct. Yeah.
But then with great big steel-edged plows, we
We tore it all up, yeah.
We really did.
Yeah. Although, tallgrass prairie is a very particular habitat that fits a particular time and place, but it's very similar to many other types of grassland around the globe. And so here in
Right.
Pennsylvania, for example, we're a forest-dominated state historically, but no ecosystem is static. And so there always would have been turnover as trees fell, and then we had indigenous impacts on the landscape, and then we had
course.
settler impacts on the landscape. And so whenever trees were cleared naturally or through human impacts, you get a meadow, you get a grassland. And
Yeah.
so Pennsylvania would have been dotted with much smaller versions of something a little bit similar to that grassland. So I do sort of have my feelers up thinking
Yeah.
about new research in Pennsylvania.
Great, yeah, I wondered about that as well. Otherwise, it's, a lot of driving.
Yeah, right. I'd like to move a little bit away from that, although that Illinois project is a long-term one that I intend to continue for a long time.
Great, great. And of course, all life forms are opportunistic, and if they find a niche that they
Yeah.
can exploit,
They
they'll
will.
do it. They'll do it. Are bees, are they indigenous creatures here in North America, or are they like some of us, migrants?
Absolutely, yeah. So a little bit of a mix, but we do have a very diverse native bee community in North America. So we have at least 4,000 species. We're always ticking that number a little bit up.
Wow.
So we're still discovering new bee species all the time, although the majority of them have been described in North America. In Pennsylvania, we're at over 300 and counting. Again, as people continue to crawl throughout the state, we get to add more to our state checklist. So yeah, we have a very highly diverse native bee community, but of course with humans moving around the globe, bees have moved around the globe with us. So especially the honeybee
Right.
is the biggest example of a bee that's quite abundant in Pennsylvania and would not have been here prior to a couple hundred years ago.
Okay,
And then there are a
so-
few other species that sort of make inroads in the modern era, but that's the
Great.
biggie.
And I think that's an important thing to recognize, that the honeybee, our little honey-making friend, is not the only creature like that around.
Nope, it's only one species of the many that call Pennsylvania home. Yeah.
And are there honeybees out in this tall prairie
Yeah.
grass?
Yeah, and they're also not really
ecosystem.
supposed to be there.
Okay.
And yeah, the particular site where I work, it's a property owned by the Nature Conservancy
Yes.
that's been restored sort of incrementally and grown bigger since the 1980s. And we're trying to restore it and we're trying to maintain it in as close to a pre-European colonization state as we can. And so they have a very active schedule of prescribed fire that would have
Right.
mimicked historic indigenous burning as well as lightning, burns caused by lightning. And then we also have a bison herd on half the prairie, which is very cool from a tourist standpoint and a
Of
research
course, yeah.
standpoint. So it's a wonderful site. But since we do want it to be sort of as natural as possible, and unfortunately there are beekeepers close to the preserve, and so we do see
I bet,
those
yeah.
honeybees coming into the preserve. And it's a little hard to study in a global sense, not just me, but to pin down what is the interaction between honeybees and native bees. But we do know that there's disease transfer, and we're starting to get very careful research that's logging competitive interactions that actually happen at flowers themselves. So
I wondered about that,
yeah. So I do
Yeah.
like honey, but I would like them to not be in the natural areas that people are working very hard to conserve. Yeah.
Yeah, honeybees, they're not exactly a domesticate, are they?
Well, they are. Yeah. So these days
I mean, we
consider
use
them
them.
livestock.
Are they-
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, we control them and their movements and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
I was thinking of more like reindeer or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and honeybees can survive perfectly well without us, and,
Right.
and certainly there are going to be feral honeybee colonies, around the state. But they do best with human management, and especially the way that our agriculture has sort of evolved in tandem with honeybee domestication. There's a real tight integration there for both species, for humans.
So
and
yeah,
for
it's
bees,
not
yeah.
just making honey, it's also pollinating
Yeah,
all
right.
the angiosperms on Earth.
Yeah.
Well, what do the sort of wild ground nesting bees do out in those grasslands then?
Yeah, well, so ground nesting bees, so that's a good term to bring up because we're so used to thinking about honeybees and thinking about,
Yeah.
oh, bees live in a box.
Little hives.
Yeah,
Yep.
which most of them don't. So yeah, I think it's 90% of our native bee species in North America nest in the ground to some extent. And there's a lot of diversity within that term, ground nesting. So in the tall grass prairie, we get a number of species that are going to be looking for bare soil, and that's one area where bison come in because they roll and they create wallows
sure
that are
do.
areas of bare soil. Yeah. So yeah, there's a grad student out there who's working on understanding how bees use bison wallows as nesting habitat, for example. So they're looking for areas of bare soil like that. But then other bees that fall into that category of ground nesting are some that they might nest like at the level of the ground. So they might sort of be under the leaf litter, sort of in among the grass stems. So there's kind of a whole diversity, but we're talking about below the ground and also kind of right at that level of the ground.
Yeah.
And they're just all living their lives. So each little female is out visiting flowers, collecting pollen for her
Flying
offspring.
around.
Flying around, very active. And then well, if we want to think strictly about the bees nesting in the ground, many of them will excavate a tunnel down into the ground, and then they'll sequentially put in a pollen provision, so an amount of food that they're putting aside
Okay.
for their offspring. They'll lay an egg there, and then they'll sort of wall it off, so it'll be a little cell, and then they'll build these cells sort of up through their tunnel. And then once they've done that one, they'll move somewhere else and do it again for the duration of their lifespan.
Okay, and are these ground nesters, do they have that social hierarchy that we expect from
No.
honeybees?
Yeah,
No,
so
it's
most of
it's
them
more
are solitary.
an anarchist syndicalist commune
Yeah,
rather than
yeah.
a kingdom. Okay.
Yeah, and often not even a commune. You know, they're usually just sort of off on their own,
Yeah.
not paying much attention to their neighbors. Although we do get sort of a whole range of sort of behaviors and habits. So we do have some that are more what we would call gregarious nesters, where many females of the same species will end up in the same area, sort of utilizing the same nesting resource, but they're not cooperating in the way that we think of with the social species. They're not sharing labor and
Right.
dividing tasks. They're really focused on their offspring. Yeah, yeah,
How nice.
yeah.
How nice.
Yeah,
Kind of
I like them.
a
Yeah.
nuclear family there. Good.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you've been doing a lot of teaching as well, as we all do at Albright College. It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
not being a Research One university, but a teaching institution where undergraduates do get a chance to do some research.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
What courses have you enjoyed?
Yeah, well, they started me off a little bit easy in the fall. I was
Okay.
teaching intro bio, both for our biology majors and our non-majors.
Okay.
And that was really fun. I loved teaching the intro bio for the non-majors because it's sort of my chance to go back to the roots of my general biology background and sort of remember all the cool stuff that made me a bio major in the place before I
Yeah.
even knew
It's like having children.
what I was interested in.
It's
Yeah,
your chance
right.
to
Right, go
remember
back to
what
the
life was
basics.
about.
Yeah. So that was really fun, and then I also really enjoy the challenge of taking students from a diversity of majors. You know, because they they have to take a science for their general ed requirement. So people from a diversity of backgrounds, and so my sort of personal challenge is I don't want this to just be a boring course that they're taking to tick off
Not
a
a
box.
requirement.
Yeah, so I'd like to find something in biology that is relevant to those students. Often that's a medical angle because, of course, we're all thinking about our health all the time.
Right.
So that's very easy to do, but just trying to find, you know, sort of what are those inroads that get the students, I don't want to say excited to come to class, but at least more interested
sure.
in the material in this required course that they have to take.
Yeah, open their own minds so that they can take more away from
Yeah,
the
well,
experience
yeah, and
as
I'd
well.
like them to be sort of biologically literate at a basic level coming out of the class because we're confronted with biological news every day. You know,
Every
to be
day.
able to interpret a news article about COVID, for example. Obviously, I'm not teaching them, you know, high-level medicine or anything, but to have the critical thinking about biology to engage with, you know, a standard news article, I think is an important
It's
skill.
a news article or something that's not real news that
Well, and then
people
they have to
post on
assess.
social
Yeah,
media and
yeah.
having that ability to
Yeah.
distinguish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really fun. And then this spring, I'm teaching courses that are more in my area of specialty. So I'm teaching an entomology course which I'm developing from scratch, which is a lot of work, but a lot of fun. For the rest of this semester, we'll be going outside most weeks and collecting insects and practicing identifying them, which are skills we've worked on in the first half of the semester. So I'm really excited about that one. And then I'm teaching the Intro to the Tropical Ecology of Costa Rica course.
Oh, how
So
great.
yeah, teaching the sort of the indoor lecture portion of that right now, and then we go on a summer trip with another professor as well in May and June for the lab portion. of that
How
course.
fabulous.
Yeah.
We in last month's show, we mentioned the station in Costa Rica and the mural project that
Yes, yeah.
Mike Miller and Kristen Woodward were heading down there. But you're going down with Steve Meck?
Yep, going down with Dr. Meck. Yep, and we have I think 8 students from Albright and then 7 students from Alvernia who are going with us as well. So it's a nice joint effort, and 2 faculty from Alvernia also. So
Oh, very good.
yeah, it'll be a great group. I
Right,
think.
and no
Yeah.
basketball games involved.
No,
Enough said
we're
about
gonna
that.
try to keep it chill.
Yeah, good move.
Yeah,
Good move. So tropical ecology, we're talking about plant life, we're talking about small mammals.
Talking about
swinging
everything.
From trees, lots of
Yeah.
lizards and turtles.
And bees, yeah.
And bees.
Yeah, hopefully some turtles. Yeah, I don't know anything about tropical turtles, but we'll see what we can find.
I've heard that they hang out in Costa Rica
Okay,
once
cool.
a year or something like that.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're thinking about the sea turtles. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
But, and must be amazing insects down there.
Oh, yeah, huge insect diversity, across all groups of insects. Yeah, so we'll sort of just be wandering in awe and taking photos and seeing if there's anything we can identify and just having fun with it.
Oh, how great. Now, have you worked in tropical regions before or
No,
traveled in Central America?
Yeah, I've certainly traveled. Yeah, so I've spent a fair amount of time in Mexico, Colombia, and Peru,
Okay.
but I've never been to Costa Rica, and I have not done anything professional down there. I've only been for fun.
Oh, great.
So,
So you'll be sort of a newbie,
Yep.
although having that educated perception of the environment
Yeah,
down there.
yeah. Well, and the course focuses a lot on patterns and explicitly comparing tropical to temperate ecosystems, and so that's been a big focus in the content that I've been delivering during the semester, and that'll be a big focus of the observations that the students make as well. So trying to just understand what are the differences and similarities between these 2 very different zones that the students are gaining experience in.
That's great.
Yeah.
I often do explain to my history students that you move east and west and things are kind of the same. Maybe elevation changes, rainfall or something like that. But you move north to south
Oh,
and
yeah, things get
everything changes.
Very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Great. And it'll be summer. It'll be warm.
Yeah, although also part of their rainy season.
Okay.
So we'll get a little chilly sometimes.
maybe
I
you'll
think,
be
when
at
we get wet.
elevation as well.
Yeah, and we are spending some time. We're going to go to Arenal,
Okay.
the big famous volcano, for example. So we'll get up into some chilly areas there. Yeah.
Unless it gets hot.
Yeah. Well, knock on wood.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Great. Have you had a chance to enjoy other things at Albright? I know that I've seen you at our wonderful faculty seminar on anti-racist pedagogy,
Yeah.
and that's been so helpful and stimulating and supportive and challenging.
Absolutely.
And I did see you at the string orchestra
Yep.
concert in the
Yep.
fall, so
Yes.
I'm eternally grateful for
Yeah.
that. Other things that you've seen or done?
Yeah, I've been to a couple of the student theater performances.
Yeah.
So Orlando, which was phenomenal in February. Yeah, I was blown away by that. And the Big House last fall, which
Yeah.
was really cool because that was the one, of course, that was written by students. And so it was fascinating to see sort of a student perspective.
Yeah,
in,
where they're coming
in drama.
from.
Yeah.
How
yeah.
they understand their own lives.
Yeah, and it was so many of the pieces in that were written directly from the Albright experience, and so I felt like I really learned a little bit about how students
Yeah, a
experience
little bit of Albright 101 almost.
Yeah, so that was
How
very
great.
helpful and fun. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Now I know you also have commitments off campus. I think I saw it on Facebook that you had been part of a committee that had nominated 2 nominees for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes. Yeah.
And you might ask, how does someone get to nominate candidates for the Nobel Peace Prize? It's by having won it oneself, or being part of an
or volunteering for an organization.
an
yeah,
organization
if not,
with a
yeah.
very distinguished history in the work of peace,
Yeah.
the American Friends Service Committee.
Yep.
Great. And how did you get to join that task
Yeah,
force? Just step
yeah.
forward and say, I'll do that.
Yeah, no. So I was raised Quaker.
Yeah.
That's sort of my, I guess, religious cultural background, and they don't want to let you go once you're sort of involved. And then, of course, I went to Swarthmore College, which has a Quaker background.
Yep.
And at Swarthmore, there's a lot of sort of ethos and cultural expectation around being civically involved.
Yes.
Even if you're a STEM major, for example. And so that it was a very natural route for me, especially as I graduated from Swarthmore and knew that if I wanted to continue with a PhD in the natural sciences and head down that career path, I knew that I would be moving around quite a bit for the next decade or more of my life. And so the American Friends Service Committee was a good service opportunity that you can do mostly remotely. And then I actually did an honors minor in peace and conflict studies at Swarthmore.
At Swarthmore.
And so,
Wonderful.
so I had expressed interest in the American Friends Service Committee, which is one of the biggest peace building organizations globally. And so once they were, sort of figuring out, okay, well, where do we put you? Then the Nobel Peace Prize Committee ended up being a good fit. So I've been serving on that since, I guess, 2019.
Okay.
I think.
Great.
The time telescoped in weird ways during the pandemic. Yeah.
Yes.
And actually, so yes, folks who have won the Peace Prize in the past, which AFSC did in 1948, are eligible to nominate folks in the present, but also university professors in relevant fields. So I
Okay.
could not, as a biology professor, but I think you in the history department, for
I think
example,
so.
would be able to nominate as well, and political science. So there's a few fields where
Probably in
academics
economics.
can do that.
I know in the hard sciences like physics, people know
Yeah.
who's going to win the Nobel Prize. They just don't know which year it will
Right.
be.
Yeah. Well, when there are big. Yeah,
So
big
all you
discoveries
have to do
going
is
on.
live long enough, and then you'll get it.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
literature, it's a little more
Yeah,
complicated.
It's often after.
Yeah. Well, it's you don't get it after, even if you deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's been very interesting, and certainly I think that's one thing that makes me a good fit at Albright. I know I've already been hired, so I don't need to give my pitch, but that was one thing that drew me to liberal arts environments was, for one thing, my educational background was there, but I think Albright allows faculty to have different ways of expressing their creative and scholarly interests, and so I knew that having, a volunteer commitment outside of academia and outside of my field of expertise is something that would be looked on favorably in a liberal arts environment. And so that's, it's sort of an important part of me and a part that I like to be at an institution that values that sort of multidisciplinarity in its faculty members. So,
Yeah. Well, I value that a lot. I think it's wonderful.
yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
As you go forward with your research, are there Pennsylvania projects or projects closer to home that are on the horizon?
Yeah, well, I've been trying to brainstorm, and I do have 2 students this summer who've applied to do research projects.
To do
with
acre
me.
projects.
Yeah, through the acre
Oh, great.
program. Yeah, so they would each be a half acre if we're awarded the funding.
You can do
and-
comparative acres, right? One burned over and the other not.
Yeah, right. That would be fun. And those would both be local, and they're not
Okay.
with bees in particular because, of course, they follow where the student research interests are. One of them is actually we pitched a comparative project looking at vegetative communities in Costa Rica and Pennsylvania. So
Oh.
she's going on the Costa Rica class trip and will do part of this project for her final project for that course.
Yep.
And then we have a whole other component to it that would be the acre during the summer that would be collecting data in Pennsylvania. So that one would be really fun. And then the other one is a general insect one because we do have an insect collection at Albright College, but it's several decades old. It's been several decades since anyone sort of took ownership of it and maintained it. So I've been using that to teach entomology this spring and realizing there's a lot of holes here that we need to go out and find more local stuff.
Of plentiful indigenous species that just aren't in their little square.
Yeah, exactly. That were never sampled because it was, I assume it was a faculty member who had students that would do specific projects. And so this student is very interested in insects in general, and so she wants to sort of specifically identify what those holes are, and we're going to try to go out and do targeted sampling to get the specimens that we need to build a more complete collection for educational purposes.
Oh, great.
So those are sort of the two things I'm getting started with, but then I sort of mentioned earlier, like keeping my feelers up, right? So thinking about what would be my research program at Albright, and I do have this long-term project in Illinois, but I would like to have a research home, in Pennsylvania, and a research program that's based in Pennsylvania for Albright undergrads. So yeah, no solid ideas yet, but I've started to feel out some collaborators in the state at other institutions, and figure it out in the next couple of years. Yeah.
Great. I know they have a big insect collection up at State College.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And they've got some bee researchers up there as well. Yeah, they do big overarching diversity questions for the most part, and then also some sort of bee diet things. And my heart is in actually bee behavior and how are bees deciding where to forage in a landscape.
Yeah.
So
Not asking
I'd like
what
to
they
go
can
in
do
that
for you,
direction.
but what they're doing for themselves.
Yeah, just understanding how they work in the environment, because there's actually really very little that we truly do understand about some of the fundamental decisions that they make. And that's the area that my PhD was in. And I'd sort of like to return to that, because it's also an area that's very easy to get undergrads involved in, because you can go out to a small area and just observe the bees. Which is very fundamental research and very amenable to a wide range of research experience and background. So.
Right. So after an intro bio course, you can go out there and be an effective researcher and get stuff done.
Yep.
Great. I will say that I think you're a wonderful match for our small liberal arts college. That sort of intense intellectual interest in that field of research, but then the ability to share it with young kids.
That's the fun part.
Yeah. It really is. Teaching is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. I did get to teach in grad school as a teaching assistant at Rutgers, and so I knew that interacting with the students was really what the research is very interesting, but it's easy to get sort of bogged down, and you can bang your head against a wall, and so to have the teaching be such a large part of the job.
And you can sometimes be a really good
wonderful.
researcher without having those communication skills that you need in the classroom or lab.
Yeah. So I think it sort of keeps you grounded, because you have to maintain that ability to communicate, and then gives you you can have fun, basically. I get to have fun for my job, just interacting with students. So yeah.
Great. Well, this has been a wonderful chat. It's gone by very quickly.
Thank you. Yeah. This was wonderful.
But we wish you continued good luck with the rest of the school year, and have a fabulous summer travels as well. And
thank you very much.
Research experiences.
Yeah.
So, great. Next month, I'll be introducing you to some of our graduating seniors, and we'll talk about their Albright experiences and their many accomplishments. So we'll look forward to that on the next edition of the Albright Scholar. So long.